Hello guys, Forristicat here. Happy to report that I finally finished this title here. You may have heard of it. It's called Mass Effect number 3. To be honest, I just didn't have sort of much time to play it, so I sort of was playing it whenever I could. And finally yesterday had some spare time, so I thought, fuck it, I gotta complete this game, and that's exactly what I did. So I guess I'm going to start where, I obviously should start, which is at the end. Which is because everyone is commentating about the ending of Mass Effect 3, and, I have to agree with everyone that has been saying the ending was bad, purely because the ending was terrible. I mean, especially for a trilogy to end the game on something like this, it's just really atrocious. Like, it's unforgivable. Like, to sort of take the fans that were invested in the trilogy right from the beginning, and knowing that this is not going to continue after this point, not giving like an all-out satisfying conclusion is akin to murder. Like, it just should not happen, but it does. Anyway, nevertheless, what can I say about the ending? Well, any ending that you sort of have to explain too much, that's clunky, that has too much of an information dump, that just isn't very clear to begin with, is crap. When this Crucible kid was sort of describing all the different options, I was so much in my head thinking, what does that mean? What does that mean? Which option should I choose? And that should never ever be something that you're going through when you're experiencing an ending. It's just like watching a murder mystery movie. When you're watching a sort of like murder mystery movie and you get the killer to be revealed, you shouldn't have to sort of go scrambling too much around in your head. It should just be a purely emotional experience. You should be like, oh, okay, so that's the person that murdered the other people. Oh, yeah, that makes sense, blah, blah, blah. This ending sort of like made me all analytical, threw me in my head, just overall just way too clear, way too unclear, and just way too much of a clunky process. So as a result, the ending was very bad. And then, like, even though I downloaded this like extra sort of pack, some sort of like extended experience or something like that, I'm not sure if that changed the ending that much. But nevertheless, like to have the final scene of like Edie and like the Joker, or the pilot Joker, get off the ship, and they're looking at this world, and then boom, like you cut to the credit sequence. And like when you're watching a credit sequence, you should be really thinking, hell yeah, that was one hell of a game. For those of you who were lucky enough to have completed Max Payne 3, when you finish Max Payne 3 and you are listening to the music on the title sequence, you're like, wow, what a fantastic game I've just played. That was an incredible experience. When you're listening to this music at Mass Effect 3, whatever the hell music it is, I mean, you got the classical sort of like piano in the background, you're thinking, what the hell have I just played? Why has it sort of all come to this? So yeah, the ending was crap. It was terrible. It was unfulfilling. Definitely, I chose option where like Shepard sort of like dove in and like sacrificed himself and like spread himself, so to speak, all over the universe. I always thought he was like a true hero in my eyes. And that scene like right at the end where sort of like the grandfather has explained to his son that like every galaxy has its stars, every star has its planets, every planet has its own creatures, characters, and every sort of person has their own story. I like that, but that should be icing on the cake, right? But this cake isn't it wasn't delivered well enough, so it was crap. Overall, though, I have to say that in terms of my 3 tiers of which I judge things, story, characters, emotion, there was just so much sort of like different creative ideas story-wise. I'm speaking in terms of like environments, the different sort of like alien species, the Sari, Elcor, the Turians, the whatever creature was Mortis, the Solari, the Asari, the Reapers, especially the design was sort of genuinely sort of like was sort of like a terrifying sort of like presence that they brought. So kudos to whoever developed those creatures, especially in terms of like the codex and just the amount of sort of range of sort of planets and like different side missions you went on that definitely did enough to sort of maintain like my story rating of it to be like somewhere between like a 6.5 and a 7. I mean, and this is like taking the trilogy as a whole. Like overall, you know, if I was just to judge it upon Mass Effect 3, I'd probably, you know, rate it like 5.5 or something like that, purely because of this ending. This ending really, like, you know, was the F in the A here. Nevertheless, in terms of characters, the character rating is going to be higher because, well, there was a lot of good characters here, guys. You know, Jack, Miranda, Garrus especially, you know, one of my favorite characters. Mortis, of course the Asari, what's her name, like that sort of priestess, Samara, all the other characters. Like there was just so many different sort of characters and friendships you sort of built up over the course of the 3 trilogies. Garrus, Rex, you know, all the characters in Mass Effect 3. Those sort of really did give the character rating, in my opinion, at least a, you know, 7.5 out of 10. Like the characters were definitely sort of, they were good. Nevertheless, I think, and this sort of really ties back into the ending, the fact that the ending just didn't have any emotional impact and the characters sort of didn't feel like they interacted with each other enough. They didn't have sort of like an emotional sort of, you know, back and forth between each other. I think that was sort of something that would have really sort of, you know, amped up this game a little bit more. You know, like I've said it before, like, you know, like for TV shows to have like uptime moments which they deserve, they need to have downtime moments, and I think this game didn't have really that many downtime moments. What I'm talking about by downtime moments is like, for example, that scene in the Citadel where if you saw, like, you went up like somewhere with Garrus and you started like shooting things like little space discs or whatever in the distance, and you were both sort of commentating about old days and stuff like that. What's another one? Like for me, like I've developed a relationship with not the Asari, the blue creatures with like the sort of octopus hair. Can't remember what her name is. Nevertheless, you know, like when she's like, you know, I've got a gift to sort of give to you, and like she sort of like takes you in this sort of like altered state, and you got like the whole sort of like galaxy, sort of like black stars all around you, and then like, you know, it shows like the universe like exploding, and that, you know, you guys sort of kiss and stuff like that. These downtime sort of like emotional moments are what makes games, in my opinion, really, really great, and this game did not have enough of them. I was expecting them, especially since this is sort of like the end of the trilogy. I thought, honestly guys, like, you sort of built it all up to come to this, so you sort of have like a little bit of ammunition to actually sort of like, you know, use what you've built up over the course of these 3 games, and like, you know, take advantage of all these relationships, characters and storytelling plot lines you've like started to thread throughout the whole trilogy. But I think this must have been a rush job, because it seemed like, you know, who the hell thought that would be a good ending? You know, that's just like, seriously, when you're watching that, like, it literally just makes you cringe. And like, and you know, these guys did a pretty damn good job for Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2, and I think it all comes down to like the title sequence in Mass Effect 1. You know, like, many decisions lie ahead, you know, none of them easy, and here, like, they lost this sort of vision or whatever, or like the sort of gritty sort of impacts, that feeling you get when you, like, you know, you watch that first title sequence in Mass Effect 1. It was not carried through to, you know, this final Mass Effect 3. I think part of the sort of gameplay design sort of like actually led to the sort of non-emotional impact which I was after. So that is to say, like, the environments sort of feel very like clunky, sort of robotic. Like, oh, okay, can I jump over there? Oh, there's no arrow button there, so I can't jump over there. Oh, okay, I wonder if I can go over there. Oh yeah, it looks like they've sort of designed everything over there to sort of be a block there, so I'm not even going to bother going over there because I know that they've sort of blocked it. Especially when, like, you hear things in the background and like you want to sort of like continue listening to what a character is saying or whatever, and then boom, all of a sudden like a cutscene gets interrupted. Another thing which took away sort of from the realism is sometimes you'll be like having a conversation, then like you'll go back to another conversation option, and the conversation won't sort of make much sense anymore, like just logically speaking, and it'll sort of like, you'll go on this weird sort of like conversation loop sometimes. stuff like that. I can see it like as a challenge for like game developers, but I think they should have programmed something in there like if you use this conversation path, it wouldn't make any sense for you to ask that question again. So don't say that anymore. It took away from like this sort of like immersion sort of experience. And I was thinking like, you know, if you took like say like the voice acting and sort of like motion capture from say Heavy Rain or from the Uncharted series and plugged it into Mass Effect 3, I really believe that, you know, this game would come up a couple of levels, because like I said, the emotional impact was not there. Like there was no sort of and this is like that's another thing that now I think about, like what I was really looking forward to was like a sense of loss. Like I said, they developed all these characters, sort of like the relationships over the years, so I'm like, come on, just give me a moment like where I have to rescue Garrus or something like that, and if I don't, you know, I think shit, this guy might die. There was no opportunity for that, at least in my storyline. So there needed to be some sort of like, you know, this is it moments, and it was sort of just fizzled out in the end. Especially going back to the voice acting and like sort of like the way sort of cutscenes sort of like sometimes abruptly sort of end. When, you know, Shepard is giving his final speech like to his team, yeah, that's the final speech of the whole trilogy, and like it was sort of going up like a little bit. I thought this is not too bad, and then like after I select another option, like the scene just ended. I'm like, what the hell? This is like his final like battle speech for, you know, the whole trilogy, and like that's it. You know, is that all we're gonna get? It was just not good at all. It just sucked, and I really wanted to see sort of like him like addressed more than just, you know, his group of character friends, like just sort of like a whole sort of like battalion of soldiers or whatever like that. But, you know, nevertheless, like he addressed just his own people, his own characters. Nevertheless, I think something has to be said for Mass Effect 3, just in terms of the sheer, like I said, the scope and just the mythological dump that these BioWare guys sort of took to sort of, especially in terms of like the codex and stuff like that, to flesh out this universe. Creativity wise, I have to give them kudos for that. I think overall, like this game gets about a 7 out of 10. Like I said, some gameplay elements in terms of like cutscenes abruptly ending, the characters not having hardly any sort of emotional expressiveness, which is very important if you're trying to convey emotions in games. That didn't come through at all. Like even like when, like, you know, Shepard is joking and like about to cry, it almost seems like he can't like physically do it. So the character modeling was crap in that regard. Like I said, like the demo of Mass Effect 3, like the first sort of introduction to it, when, like, you know, like he sees like the Reaper destroy the shuttle, you know, that's the demo that you could download when it, you know, first got released. I thought, wow, you know, this could really be a, you know, great finale, a great ending to the game. But yeah, like I said, it fizzled out in the end. Not enough storytelling pieces with you and your team actually like doing some crazy mission where you think someone is about to die, stuff like that. Like, no, I wanted like to feel like a sense of like potential loss somewhere in this game. I didn't feel that at all. So that's the thing, like the main thing, like, yeah, there wasn't enough character sort of like involvement based upon what they sort of built up before, in terms of like a sense of loss or a sense of urgency or a sense of, you know, like, please, you know, don't let that Reaper kill Garrus, or please don't like let Thane die because of that. I really think that you know, some of those elements were needed to sort of make this game something, you know, truly special. And especially the ending, like, come on, like this ending to the trilogy, if you don't leave it on a satisfying note, which, you know, they didn't, like the final taste in your mouth is going to be like, you know, in terms of, you know, the Matrix 2 and 3, you're going to start inventing, you know, if you don't like it, you start inventing stories in your head like, oh, and this is another example with the Terminator series, like, oh, you know, as far as you're concerned, it ended with Terminator 2. So now I'm like inventing own scenarios in my head, like, oh, you know, this is the way the game ended, blah blah blah. You know, even though like I know what I saw on sort of, you know, the television. Just trying to sort of like maintain what sort of really made, you know, the first Mass Effect games really good. And to me, it was like the camaraderie of having your sort of own team, getting to know fascinating characters in between races, and exploring, like, you know, the vastness of the universe together with your own squadron. And I think that these missions in this final game sort of didn't really lend you to exploit the relationships you developed with your teammates over the course of the 3 games. So with 1 minute to go, Mass Effect 3, disappointing, overall 6.5 out of 10. The story, it was good only in terms of the amount of creativity put into the game, which is really just sort of drawing from Mass Effect 1 and 2 in terms of the environments and just the sheer scope of the game and exploring, the whole of the Milky Way. The characters were good in terms of, once again, relying on Mass Effect 1 and 2, just the sheer amount of sort of different personalities throughout the game. But a major important part of the game was emotion. I did not feel enough emotion during this game, and being the final trilogy of 3, obviously, I wanted to feel something which I did not. This is, guys, Forristicat's thoughts on Mass Effect 3. I might put up more videos later, so let me know your thoughts. Cheers.